It's Wednesday, August 13th, 2025, a steady Eddie economy. The White House gives the D.C. homeless population a choice, and why I don't think computer programmers need to fear AI just yet. Next on the AM Update. Well, new inflation numbers came in yesterday, some beating expectations, some surpassing expectations. The White House says it's looking pretty good.
We continue to see positive economic reports across the board. Today's CPI report revealed that inflation beat market expectations once again, and inflation remains stable.
White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, whom we'll hear from in just a little bit. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says there's no demonstrable negative impact from tariffs, even though they've been around now for months. Here he is on Fox News.
Just on the tariff income, I'd been saying $300 billion, but I think we're going to have to substantially revise that up. So well in excess, 1% of GDP. And then with the new investments, they're the sovereign investments that we talked about. But then in terms of the committed investment by private industry, we're well over $10 trillion.
The White House and others close to the White House continue to tout the fact, or the claim anyway, that it's not the American consumer that's paying for tariffs. It's largely foreign governments and foreign corporations. Well, this continues to dominate the news cycle. The D.C. Home Rule Act. Here is Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt once more, who says they're already making tons of arrests.
Yesterday, President Trump took bold action to finally restore law and order right here in our nation's capital. The president declared a crime emergency in the District of Columbia, federalized the D.C. Police Department, and mobilized the D.C. National Guard to end violent crime in our nation's capital. As part of the president's massive law enforcement surge, last night, approximately 850 officers and agents were surged across the city. They made a total of 23 arrests. 23
arrests? Those are rookie numbers. Got to up those numbers. You may be wondering, is this really overkill? Do we need the National Guard and federalization of D.C. law enforcement? Well, here's D.C. Police Chief Pamela Smith at a news conference yesterday.
That's what the chain of command is now?
What does that mean?
Well, is it Pam Bondi speaking to the mayor, speaking to you, or how does this work?
So, at the executive order...
Yeah, that second voice you heard is D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. The question to the D.C. Police Chief Pamela Smith, who served as Chief Equity Officer for the police department there in the nation's capital. She was asked, what does the chain of command look like? And she replied, what does that mean? That is the D.C. Chief of Police. That's pretty nuts. Here is Maxine Waters, Congresswoman from Texas, who says President Trump's trying to start a civil war.
Words mean nothing. Actions mean everything. Watch this. Watch it very closely. Ask a lot of questions. Focus those cameras on everything that's going on, because this president is trying to lead us into what could be called a civil war.
I'm old enough to remember in the aftermath of the 2020 election when multiple right-wingers got demonetized and censored on various social media platforms for claiming that what we were going through and that the roads we were heading down in the aftermath of that totally up-and-up election would lead us to a civil war. I'm old enough to remember that. Jeanine Pirro, U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, was asked a gotcha question yesterday about crime rates in the nation's capital. That did not turn out well for that journalist.
Out of time? That means he's had enough. Goodbye. Thank you. I want you to report on.
But you said it's guns. You said it's guns on the street that's causing this problem. Are you concerned that the DOJ's funding cuts to gun violence prevention programs undermine the effort?
We are putting all kinds of resources onto the street.
Yeah, didn't work out too well for that journalist. Jeanine Pirro just had enough. Had enough of the dumb line of questioning there. So again, this continues to be a major story. The White House also says they're giving homeless populations in the nation's capital a choice.
The Metropolitan Police Department, with the support of the new federal agencies who have been surging on the streets of the District of Columbia, are going to enforce the laws that are already on the books here in Washington, D.C. For far too long, these laws have been completely ignored, and the homelessness problem has ravaged the city. So D.C. Code 22-1307 and DC Municipal Regulation 24-100 give the Metropolitan Police Department the authority to take action when it comes to homeless encampments. So homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time. Again, these are pre-existing laws that are already on the books. They have not been enforced.
So there is Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, for the third time already, saying that they are actually going to enforce the homeless laws that are already on the books in Washington, D.C. What she spelled out there is a totally humane, totally compassionate way, might I say, of dealing with homelessness. And I have to say, I can't prove this, but I have to say probably a majority of the homeless population in any given major population center in this country is homeless by choice. They don't want to be in shelters. They don't want to go to addiction recovery programs. They like being out on the street. And so something has to be done. You're at an impasse when you've reached that point. Moving on, here is Beto O'Rourke, failed Senate candidate from Texas, failed gubernatorial candidate from Texas, back dropping F-bombs, saying the quiet part once again out loud and proud.
We are in a basketball game right now, if you'll excuse the metaphor, where the refs have left the arena. And the other side is just clobbering the shit out of us, just punching us in the face, kicking us in the nuts. And we're kind of throwing our hands up and we're asking the crowd, the people of America, hey, do you see what's going on here? This is unfair. This isn't the rules that we agreed to play by. Well, who cares about the fucking rules right now? Punch back, kick back, dunk over their heads, and win some fucking power.
So there is, again, there are no rules. It's all about power. That's what I've always said about lefties. That's what I've always said about progressivism. It is not about any sort of principle. It's all about the will to power. And you just heard Beto O'Rourke spell that out there. I will say the left is rather conflicted right now, whether or not to stay in this country and fight and win some bleeping power, as Beto O'Rourke said, or get the heck out of here. Here's Delia Ramirez. You'll remember she spoke in Mexico City, I think a couple of weeks ago, saying how she's a proud Guatemalan first and American second. She doubled down on that type of rhetoric here in this press conference at the Netroots Nation conference.
I want to ask, it seems like a really broad question, but what does it mean to you to be an American?
What is it for me to be an American? For me, being an American is the ability to dream, to love, to have dissent.
Why can't, like, a Lithuanian? Why can't a Lithuanian, like, have the ability to dream? Just wondering. Here's Congresswoman Delia Ramirez continuing on.
To be able to organize and build a kind of solidarity that recognizes the good and the bad of the formation of this country, that is willing to reckon with how we have used colonialism to harm others, especially in the Western Hemisphere, and begin to think about and imagine creatively what reparations look like, what building solidarity looks like, what bringing all of us together means. To be an American, for me, is the ability to love and also push back.
Just get out of here, then. Go do this somewhere else. If we suck so bad, you're under no obligation to stay. Go back to Guatemala. Go back to Guatemala. Okay, again, I encourage that. If you think it's so bad here, if you think we're just fundamentally broken, go back. Another person who is fundamentally broken, confused, conflicted, if you will, is Simone Sanders on MSNBC.
You don't think more police make streets safer?
No, Joe. I'm a black woman in America. I do not always think that more police make streets safer.
Then leave. Go to Namibia. I think in the middle of the desert there, I don't think there's very much police presence. Just leave. So I think the left is conflicted right now, whether to stay and win some bleeping power or just leaving, because it sounds like they just want to leave. I mean, it's just... listening to them, it's just such a fundamentally broken and disastrous country. I just grow weary of these people. It's just such wickedness. And believe me, I think this underscores what I was talking about yesterday in Air Analysis. If you don't believe that the Beto O'Rourke's of the world or the Delia Ramirez's of the world or the Simone Sanders of the world, if their ilk get back into power again, if they're not going to act punitively on what they seemingly believe, even though they don't know what a chain of command is, I've got a lab in Wuhan to sell you. Well, when we come back, it boggles the mind again. We're kind of on a tear this morning. What some people believe about Hamas. Also, Mexico is expelling 26 cartel figures. We'll tell you about that. And a new milestone for the U.S. national debt. All that and more next.
Do you say Hamas has some culpability in people starving?
No.
Why? When they spent so much money building tunnels and everything under
so right now, what is going on is a slaughter, all right? And right now, Israel is,
So there is Senator Bernie Sanders on CNN. And I don't want to be, and I never sought this podcast to be, hey, let's just react to the craziness of the left. But it seems like they're on a tear over the last 24 hours. Bernie Sanders saying he does not believe Hamas has any culpability in their people starving. And that was Dana Bash bringing up, well, they've built a bunch of tunnels, and yet they're starving now. Don't you think that they have a little bit of a misplaced priorities problem? And Sanders just says no. No. Just boggles the mind. I saw this post as well from somebody named Bree A. Dale over at the Daily Wire, who said, so Hamas has reportedly withdrawn from negotiations for a ceasefire, which is true. They just did that again. And refuses to release the hostages they took on the day they started the war. That's Hamas doing that, not Israel. The Jews is what a lot of people want to talk about right now, for whatever reason. The same people who say, hey, let's focus on the fentanyl issues in our own country before we start talking about foreign escapades. But they just want to talk about the Jews. Here's my 9 points. Expose on how the Jews made me illiterate. Well, back at home anyway, kind of, in our sphere of influence, Mexico has expelled 26 high-ranking cartel figures to the United States in the latest major deal with the Trump administration as American authorities ratchet up the pressure on criminal networks sending drugs across the border. The cartel leaders and other prominent figures were being flown from Mexico to the United States on Tuesday. The Associated Press originally reported this story, citing an unnamed source who wasn't actually supposed to be talking about this. Those being handed over to the U.S. include Abigail Gonzalez Valencia, leader of the Los Cunas group, closely aligned with notorious cartel Jalisco New Generation, or CJNG. Another person, Roberto Salazar, is accused of participating in the 2008 killing of a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy. Mexico's Attorney General's Office and Security Ministry confirmed the transfers, which were carried out after a promise from the U.S. Justice Department that prosecutors would not seek the death penalty in any of those cases. So at least they're going to be in our control now, but the actual penalty that they probably deserve, some of these people, I mean, just heinous, wicked people, cartel members, it looks like they're going to be avoiding that fate. Well, the national debt has surpassed $37 trillion for the first time in the nation's history. That news came late last week as the government continues to accumulate debt at a record-setting pace. New data from the Treasury Department showed that gross national debt hit $37,4,817,625,842.56 on Tuesday afternoon. The $37 trillion debt milestone comes as the total debt held by the public, a metric favored by economists that excludes debt held by intra-governmental accounts like Social Security, is expected to reach 99% of the size of the U.S. gross domestic product this year. I asked Grok if I had a penny and I stacked those pennies for every single cent of the U.S. national debt, that figure that I just laid out to you. I asked Grok, which planet would I reach with those stacked pennies? And the answer is a third of the way to the sun. It would stretch past the planet Venus. So, we're doing great here, guys. How are you? Nothing to worry about. And now here's this. Bill Maher had Dr. Phil on his program late last week. Dr. Phil, you may recall, joined and embedded with an ICE operation recently, and Bill Maher took issue with that. Listen to this.
But why are you going on these ICE raids? I don't understand that. You're a guy who we know for so many years who has been working to put families together, to bring families who are apart and heal them. And now you're going on raids with people who are literally separating families. Explain
well, now
that to
that's
me. That's not bullshit. They're not separating families?
No. Look, if you arrest somebody that's a citizen that has committed a crime or is DUI with the child in the back seat, do you think they don't separate that family right then, right there?
But that's not what's going on.
Of course they do.
Of course,
but what you're talking about, I was hearing you in your monologue saying you've got these ICE agents with masks on.
Yes.
Well, let me tell you why they have their mask on. Because we actually have legislators who passed laws about immigration and funded those laws to be executed. They actually pay these agents to go out and do this, and now they're doxing them. They're putting their names, their pictures, their addresses of their families on the internet. They're putting them on telephone poles. So, of course, they're wearing masks so they don't get outed, so people can do violence against their families. The negative actions against ICE agents are up 1,000% in the last several months. 130% violence against them. And why them? They didn't make the laws. They didn't make that law. What do you expect them to do? Just not do their job? If you don't like the law, change it. I don't like that law at all. Change the law.
If you don't like it, why are you going?
Because that is the law.
No, I'm just asking. I'm not trying to...
What I'm going on, I've looked at these files.
But I don't like hunting. I don't go out with hunters, you know.
But they've got 12... No, wait a minute. They've got... The ICE raids I've been on, I've seen the files. They've got a rap sheet, 12, 14 different cases long of child predators that they're taking off the street. These are the worst first that they're taking off the streets. Who would want them back in their community?
We all agree with that.
Dr. Phil, that was
no.
beautiful.
Hold on. Hang on. Answer the question. Who wants those people back in there? These are violent criminals.
I keep answering your questions, and you keep saying I'm not answering your questions. Nobody wants that. But we all didn't want violent criminals and gangs, but that pivoted to going to Home Depot. You know, when Trump came down the first time from the escalator, he said, you know, the rapists and the criminals and some, I assume, are good people. The ones standing in front of Home Depot just looking for an honest day's work, for an honest day pay, those are the good people, I assume.
So you're going to have a little bit better than that, Dr. Phil. He was on a roll for about the first 2 minutes before he said, I don't like this law. And then that was basically the end of that exchange. You gave up the moral high ground here. If you secretly or not so secretly agree that they all need to go, all of them, if you're in this country illegally, you are a criminal, you have broken our laws, and they all need to go, you're going to have to get used to being the bad guy. You can't go in there and say, hey, these are the laws that are on the books. We have to enforce them. Here is why unfettered illegal chattel immigration, here's how it hurts the average American. You're going to have to go in and understand that no matter what you say, they're going to hate you and they're going to make you look like the bad guy and heartless and hateful. That entire exchange was good until it wasn't anymore. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. We talked about this in passing last week, but even over the weekend, much ado has been made about the fates of those people working in computer programming. Even lawyers. Had that clip last week from, I think it was David Friedman, talking about how AI models need to be certified. They need to be, if they can pass the bar exam, they need to be made certified lawyers, whatever that means. There was a story over the weekend about a Zoomer. She's a citizen of this country who actually worked hard to go to a nice college. I think it was an Ivy League school even. It was some prestigious school. and she worked to get a degree in computer engineering, a gifted, by all accounts, programmer, and now she cannot find a job at Chipotle. And how her story is probably going to be replicated as AI becomes more and more ubiquitous, leading to more and more people's jobs getting replaced. People's jobs like those in the programming industry, computer programming. I actually do not think long-term that those jobs will be in jeopardy. Maybe lawyers, but I kind of doubt that as well. I think there's going to be some protectionism going on there if these AI models can be advanced to the point where we'd actually even consider, in a serious thought and a serious conversation, replacing real-life lawyers with computers. But here's why I don't think programmers, coders at all need to worry in the long run. Yes, these AI models can write code, and they can write code very well, very efficiently, very quickly, much quicker than a human programmer, a human coder. So yes, that is a problem in the short term. But in the long term, as these models become more and more sophisticated, guess what also needs to be more and more sophisticated? The prompts. The prompts that tell these models what to do, what to code, how to code it. Those prompts are going to have to become more and more sophisticated. For one reason alone, is that I don't think you're ever going to have anything approaching sentience. So you're always going to have an external inputter. You're going to have an external prompter, a human prompter. And guess what I also think is maybe a secondary or third order impact of this as well. Basically, a lot of these models work by putting in English and getting back code, getting back some sort of artistic expression, getting back something that is not straight up English in a lot of cases. Guess what's going to have to be refined? Your ability to write, your syntax, your grammar, your English skills, as these prompts need to become more and more tailored, more and more specific, more and more descriptive. If anything, I could foresee a future where the people who are most gifted or the people who are most capable with AI chat boxes, with generative AI fill in the blank, whether it's chat boxes or any of these other tools, the people who are most capable with those tools are actually really good English speakers, really good writers, really vivid writers. Because I think those skills are actually going to become more and more in demand as these prompts have to be more and more specific. So I was thinking about this over the weekend, and yes, it is sad. I do have compassion for Zoomers, millennials, what have you, who actually obeyed what they were told their entire lives, get a job in computer programming, go to school for computer programming, and now their jobs are probably going to be replaced, if they aren't already, by H-1B visa holders. I do have compassion for that. But I do think long-term that all is not lost when it comes to AI and programming specifically. What do you think about that assessment? Let me know at Real AM Update, where you can also vote in this week's poll of the week. I asked you, do you think President Trump is going to attempt to rein in crime in places like Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York City? I gave you 4 options. You can explore those over at Real AM Update on X in this week's poll of the week. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.